Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome. My light is not very good, but you take what we can get. Mm. So it's been a while since I was here, as you can definitely imagine. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to figure it out slowly by slowly. So, anyhow, uh, mhm, great. It's great. It's great. Yeah. Welcome back to 2026. I've done one live, not as structured as I had wanted, and I've shared a video or two, which is good. Yeah, but I want to get back to live streaming, mostly so that I can be accountable to myself as I read. I um I am an avid reader, I can say for sure. I keep placing books everywhere in the house so that I can read. So I have, and I mix them up. This one is a novel. It's by Barbara Taylor. It's playing the game. Then I have a few, what do you call them? Um, I don't know. It's like a motivational book, really, or a lifestyle book. This one is the book you wish your parents had read, and your children will be glad you read. You did read, so I'm trying to get the wisdom from this one as well. But the one I want us to continue reading is this one. You can't see it very well. It's 6 months to change the world. It's about, I have a whole series of infants and not even toddlers, like young babies from day zero of pregnancy to like 5 years. So I'll start with this one. This is the first day 0 to 6 months of pregnancy. Then I'll continue with the others that I have. Um, great. So I had reached chapter 5, and that's where I'll pick up from. Then we'll read for like maybe 20, 30 minutes. Then we'll stop. Yeah. Hope your ear is good. Hope you've read a book. This is my second book, really, but I have, as I said, I'm reading several books at a go. So I have completed one, then this one is the second one that I want to complete. It's a very easy to read book, very well spaced. Okay, you can still can see, but the spacing is good. I like such books. Big letters, proper spacing. All right, let's start. The engine that drives the weight crisis, insulin, and the pancreas, chapter 2, was meant to draw your attention to the dangers and the consequences that are directly linked with excess weight. The idea was to make you aware that there is in fact a powerful solution and that the solution is in your own hands. Chapter 3 and 4, we looked at the emotional, mental, and social components of the weight crisis. Our focus was on the inspiring power created by the balance that exists between supply and demand. Now, in this chapter, chapter 5, I will present the main actor in the weight and diabetes crisis, which is the pancreas. As I have explained, this book is aimed at the generation of women who are learning how to bring the next generation into being. As you prepare to create new life, you will simultaneously be targeted by a diet that has become increasingly artificial over the last 30 years. that contains far too many processed carbohydrates. This diet may be tolerable for adult women in the midterm, but the same isn't true for developing fetus. So for fetus, high carbohydrate or processed diet is not advisable. So these new diets, it's not good for developing fetus. Indeed, in just 30 years, our modern diet has resulted in two generations of newborns that are born larger than the previous generation and that are afflicted with a latent vulnerability. This vulnerability is the cause of two prolonged crises, excess weight and diabetes. That's my theory. Now it has been proven. The key piece of evidence is the pancreas, your own pancreas, and that's important to understand and how it works. But especially the pancreas of your unborn child, which is absolutely more sensitive and vulnerable than your own. We are reading a small book here. The adult pancreas has many functions. What we are most concerned with here is the function as the endocrine gland. The pancreas secretes insulin, among other things. Insulin is a hormone that plays an important role in the human physiology. One of its main purposes is to regulate a person's uh, blood glucose level. Ideally, in the context of a natural human diet, after each meal containing carbohydrates, the pancreas prevents concentration of glucose in the blood from reaching levels that would be extremely toxic for all the organs that the blood reaches. Today, however, the human pancreas is forced to behave differently than in the past. That's because it is responding to the invasion of foods that did not exist at the time when the pancreas was programmed. If you are a cat or a dog, you probably have been told by a veterinarian at some point that you shouldn't feed it sugar. I didn't know that. This chapter is not meant for those who already have some knowledge on science of the science. They probably know the facts already. It is meant for you, a mother to be who doesn't want her child to be at risk, to be yet another sufferer of the plague that now strikes over one out of every two individuals. That's 50% of people. The window for establishing protection against the new foods that have flooded our diet comes at the end of our third month of pregnancy. That's when the first cells of the fetus starts preparing to secrete insulin. I didn't know that. I've said it before, but it's worth repeating. The human pancreas has existed and secreted insulin for millions of years now, since long before bakeries ever existed. Unfortunately, this self-evident fact is generally covered up or denied by those who manufacture the food products that are so high in inverse carbohydrates. Inverse carbohydrates are those carbohydrates that are not that are not giving you anything else other than calories. That is, they have no fiber, they have no nutrients. Now let's open our eyes to another simple fact. If today's diet harms and overworks the adult pancreas, the assault is infinitely more damaging on the nascent pancreas of a fetus developing in the mother's womb. And that's so true. Like if sugar today destroys our pancreas, what about to the unborn child who is still in the womb? Because this book is the 6 months to change the world. Is talking about children when they're in the womb during pregnancy. You have 6 months, that is from month 3 to the 9th month or thereabouts, assuming that you carry the pregnancy to term. You have 6 months in which you can change the health outcomes of a child. So this is what this book is all about. Okay? So now let's open our eyes to another simple fact. If today's diets harm and overwork the adult pancreas, the assault is infinitely more damaging for the nascent pancreas of a fetus developing in its mother's womb. What actually happens? It's important that you follow with me step by step as we move forward. To begin with, let's take a closer look at an experience that each of us has on a daily basis. It's an experience that usually goes unexamined. When you break it down, it tends to cause what's known as eureka moment. Once you understand what's happening, there's no going back. So let's proceed. If you're an adult human female, you have 5 liters of blood in your body. Did you know that? If you're not diabetic, your blood has approximately 1 gram of glucose per liter. Fasting, that's when you have not eaten. Okay. So that means you have about 5 grams of glucose in your whole circulatory system, the blood, per given moment when you're fasting. If you are between 1.1 and 1.25 grams, you are hyperactive to sugar and you relate it purely. Like if you take a prick, take a finger prick, and we check how many milliliters of glucose are there in your blood. If you find that you have more than 1.25, you are hyperactive and you are not interacting well with the blood glucose in your blood. And if you have more than 1.26 or higher while fasting, you are already diabetic. Obviously, if a liter of blood contains 1 gram of glucose, 5 liters contains 5 grams. Based on the total volume of your blood, that equals barely more than a teaspoon of white sugar. A teaspoon. Sometimes we put so much sugar in our cups of tea or coffee that it is saddening. Actually, I've been wondering what would be causing one to feel lethargic after eating. It should be the other way. You should feel energized after eating. So my reading these books is for a selfish reason. I want to understand some things that happen to some individuals in my on a regular basis. Because once you eat, you shouldn't feel sleepy. Okay, you should really, but not that immediate. Maybe after 30 minutes or 40 minutes. But feeling tired 10 minutes after eating does not make very much sense. Hello, Janul and Melody Munuz. Hi, everyone. It's been a while. I'm just back, and I thought the best way to get back on this live streaming is to read a book. So that's what I'm doing. It's interesting how all these books tie back to the same problem. They tie back to the same problem, which is mostly about sugar consumption, not fat, sugar consumption. I've actually done a video. I think I uploaded it. I'm not sure that it is not about fat. It's not about uh it's not about the composite the amount of fat that you consume in your diet. It's more about how much sugar is in your diet. It's not about the fat. And I feel like it's a systemic lie. Yes, I was trying to find the right words. It's a systemic lie from the food producers who tend to divert our attention to fat as opposed to so that we don't look at the amount of sugar or sugars that is in our foods. Because think of it this way: when you eat crispy chicken, again trying not to mention brands, that's okay. The chicken is okay, but it is served with dipping sauce. It is served with mayonnaise. It's served with something on the side, and it's much sweeter when you dip it in the dipping sauce. But that dipping sauce contains a lot of sugar, and you don't only take one piece of chicken. Maybe you eat 4 chicken nuggets, 8 chicken nuggets. The chicken is the problem. The fat in which the chicken is defined is not the problem. Most times is the dipping sauce. Yes, it's the dipping sauce. So when you figure out how much dipping sauce you're eating and how much sugar is in that dipping sauce, you probably will eat the chicken nuggets without dipping it. What same things? Yeah, too much sugar is not good. But what I'm saying is the food industry has a systemic way of diverting our attention from the sugar to look at the fat. It's when I say systemic is because it involves several players. There's no way that most of the like think about the craze of moving from solid fat to liquid fat. Like we have been transitioned to thinking that liquid oils is good, but again now the truth is coming out and you're being told all these fats from seed oils and all that, they don't have the way they have been processed. If you could press something like corn to make corn oil, or sunflowers to make sunflower oil, it's well and good. But thinking of what process goes, what process that do the sunflower oils go through before they you get that liquid, nice looking liquid oil on the shelf. There's a lot of heat treatment. There's definitely what do you call it? Bleaching to give it that golden color, like because if you press your own sunflower oil, it will be very dark. But do you ever wonder why is it that oil on the shelf is the same color? Anywho, let's not lose the track. I'm saying the problem is not oil, it's not fat, it's not what you're the way, it's not what you have been told for a long time. It is the sugar now. And until we reduce the truth, until we reduce sugar consumption, it is when we'll see changes in our health outcomes, starting from diabetes, hypertension, just starting also with obesity and overweight. That's where it all starts, because sugar is toxic in the body. If it exceeds 5 grams in circulation at any given moment, it will become toxic. So let's get back to reading. Now let's imagine a typical situation. You are in a supermarket and you buy a normal packet of biscuits for you or your family. You're feeling stressed or just rushed. So you open the packet. You put one biscuit in your mouth, then another. Over the next 15 minutes, you end up eating about a third of the packets, like I would sometime back. It's okay. You tell yourself you aren't the first to resort to sweet treats to calm yourself down or have a little enjoyment. Ah, what a lie. Psychological lie. Now, before you throw the packet in the bin, you stop and read the nutrition information. Then on the angular label, you will probably tell you the number of calories per serving. A serving being around 100 grams. Lower down the label, you will find information we are really after the total carbohydrates, the amount of sugars per serving of the product. If it's a typical biscuit, the amount will be between 60 to 70 grams per 100 grams of that product that you have consumed. Whereas the average will be around 65 grams for the average weight of 170 grams. So what you have consumed, like if you have a packet of biscuits, this per serving, it's mostly not one serving, it's mostly 2 servings, 3 servings or above. Because you take a packet of biscuits, unfortunately, I don't have any packet here. You will see the carbohydrates are indicated per serving, which is mostly 100 grams. But packets, like the way they package it, it's mostly to 25 grams or more, maybe 175 or more. So if you eat a whole packet, you've eaten more than 1 serving. All right. So by consuming that generous helping of biscuits, you have ingested 110 grams of carbohydrates in the form of white sugar, white flour, and sugar. Carbohydrates are among the most invasive sugars. They end up in your blood within half an hour. Yeah. Okay. So with the 5 grams you already had in your blood, this influx end up raising the total blood sugar level massively. So that's 5 grams plus another 110 grams. So at that moment, after consuming a whole packet of biscuits, you have 115 grams of sugar circulating in your blood. And we said this sugar will be in circulation within 30 minutes after consuming, which is fast. It's fast because normally if you eat a full meal, like a meal with fiber, it will be digested between 1 hour and 2 hours there. That's when digestion and release of sugar will begin. But with biscuits, cakes, sugar, all those sweet treats, the sugar floods the bloodstream very fast. So let's go back. So at the liter level, this would bring your blood sugar level to around 23 grams per liter. Any doctor will tell you that no human can survive with a blood sugar level that's high. At 10 grams per liter, you are at risk of falling into a diabetic coma. But we know from everyday experience that unless you have severe diabetes, you won't die from eating a packet of biscuits. How do you explain this apparent contradiction? Yeah. This explanation is simple. Since you are not in the final stage of diabetes, your pancreas is able to perform its basic function and control your blood sugar level. Here's what happens. in closer detail. It all starts in the moment when you decide to buy a packet of biscuit and open the packet. So it's in the brain. Your pancreas receives a signal and starts to anticipate what's coming by secreting insulin. Then, as the biscuit enters your mouth and starts to get digested, the secretion accelerates. Finally, when your sugar enters the blood and gets converted into glucose, a massive amount of insulin is released to deal with this potentially life-threatening inundation. Insulin has only limited and poorly adapted means to deal with the situation. It only locks it in the cell, and that's it. It may be starting to seem like a mantra. No pancreas, animal, or human was designed to face foods that are as rich in sugar and as penetrating and invasive as sucrose, which is table sugar, or even worse, today's white flour. And listen, it's today's white flour. And why is it saying today's white flour? It's because today's white flour is refined and it is bleached and it has nothing else other than pure. Like it's almost like eating glucose because the fiber is removed and then the nutrients are lost during the processing. That's why you find most like maize flour or pap, they are they add the micronutrients at the end of the processing. Have you ever noticed that? Like they will meal maize, process it. Most of the time, that processing includes bleaching and milling several times until it's really, really sifted. And so they found that when you have done that, whatever is being packed into the packets has no vitamins at all. So now they have come up with a way to fortify the flour that they have like reduced to nothing. Now again, it is fortified. And like here in Kenya, you find that it is fortified with 9 vitamins and several minerals. But I always wonder, what's the point? What's the point of milling the maize and then having to fortify that? Anywho, going back here. So insulin is not as able to do much with glucose as you would think. It only puts it back in the cells. So with no natural means of destroying the excess glucose, your body has a different way to counter the problem. So it is flushing it out of, so the problem which is flushing it out of the blood. Sugars expelled from the blood end up being stored in 3 places. These physiological storage facilities are in the basal, the liver, and the adipose tissue. Oh, 3 places that sugar can be stored: in the muscles, in the the adipose tissue. That's when you're told also sugar can destroy your liver because it is among the other organs that can handle that much sugar. But the handling destroys the organ because even that organ is not meant to handle as much sugar. And then the last one goes to the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is just a tissue several layers under your skin. That's how you start becoming fat. Anywho, the human liver is able to store about 50 grams of glucose in a compressed form called glycogen. But the liver of today's sedentary humans is actually dealing with a backlog of sugar. So still dealing with the sugars that accumulated during the previous meals. Since you are sedentary, did you hear that word? Higher. Like me, I just seated here and I'm eating and eating and eating. My liver will be having a lot of problems having to deal with the previous meal's sugar, and now I'm eating again. There's still too much sugar in the blood. And then in a few minutes, I eat again. So the liver is overworked with a backlog of sugar. So still dealing with sugars that accumulated during the previous meals, it can only absorb it can absorb only a small part of the new sugars coming in. So what happens? The glucose therefore tries to rest in the muscles, which normally consume a lot of glucose, storing it in the form of glycogen. But the situation ends up being the same with the liver. The muscles of an average person today are insufficiently used. They are overloaded with accumulated glycogen and can take in only a small portion of the sugar. So the liver was supposed to take 50 grams, it has not taken 50 grams. The muscles were supposed to take several grams again, it has not been able to do that. So what happens? So the disturbing amounts of glucose finally head for the fatty tissue. There they encounter no obstacles. That's because the primary role of the adipose tissue, mainly called fatty tissue, is to store energy in the form of fat. Okay. The material designed by evolution to pack a minimum of calories into a minimum of space. Like the fatty tissue, that's the role. Fatty tissue in a human can easily take in millions and millions of calories. That's why you can never stop growing fat if you continue eating sugar. Like adipose tissue is designed to take in as much sugar as possible. And that's how you start gaining weight, more and more and more weight. The more you eat, the body, through different processes, just keeps storing the excess sugar in the fatty tissue. Okay? The reality is infinitely more complex than what I have described, of course, but that, in a nutshell, is the process. Faced with such an onslaught of this highly toxic nutrient, insulin has to adapt to the situation for which it is not prepared. It converts a very high dose of lethal poison, and there's a video. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube that shows scientifically that sucrose is actually same as taking poison in the form of methanol or ethanol. Like the way a sugar is treated, specifically sucrose, is the same way a toxin is treated in the blood. So when this book says that faced with such an onslaught of this highly toxic nutrient, insulin has to adapt to a situation for which it's not prepared, it is actually true. When there's so much sugar in the body, it is poisonous because no cell can hold sugar in the form of glucose for long without being destroyed. Okay, so the insulin will convert the heavy dose of lethal poison into a substance that is fully tolerated by the organism, which is fat. It's not an exaggeration to say that insulin saves your life by taking on the threat, but it does so at the cost of weight gain that makes you fat. Like you just gain weight and weight and weight. And weight is not a good thing to have, like excessive weight. Now, for those who want to know more without getting extremely technical, here is what happens in closer details. To cope with the powerful, excessive blood sugar increase, the pancreas puts on a comprehensive emergency plan into action. From the moment that you start mentally anticipating a sugary treat, secreted insulin stops the body from using free fatty acids in order to give full priority to glucose circulating in the blood. To do so, insulin activates two antagonistic enzymes. The first one is the stimulation of lipoprotein lipase. The lipoprotein lipase is an enzyme that binds fat. Its job is to capture fat circulating in the blood and store them in any cell that will take them. See that it's not just the midsection, any cell that will take them. That's why when you become fat, every cell can become fat. Your face, your eyelids, anything, the back of your head, the neck, any part of your body that can store fat will store fat. Okay? So any cell that can take them, the fat cells mainly, it targets small fatty acids that can move easily in both directions between adipocytes and the bloodstream. In both directions means they can move inside the cell and outside the cell. So triglycerides are, as their name implies, consist of three fatty acids connected by a glycerol molecule. Their large size makes them less mobile. They therefore end up being stored long term. That is, they're called triglycerides. Triglycerides, they move slowly, so they end up being stored long time. They have three molecules. Again, breaking that bond takes a lot of energy. So the lipoprotein lipase also prevents muscles from burning fatty acids so that glycogen can be used up instead. So what happens when you eat, or your brain is anticipating that you will eat a sugary treat? The body stops using fat that is stored and deals with the energy that you're supplying it in excess so that it does not poison the blood. The sugar, the glucose does not poison the body. The second enzyme that is activated, or rather this one is inhibited, is the hormone sensitive lipase. Hormone sensitive lipase is another enzyme that liberates fat. hormone sensitive. So its role is exactly the opposite of the lipoprotein lipase role. The hormone sensitive lipase dismantles triglyceride molecules that, because of their size, are stored in the adipose tissue. This releases fatty acids into the bloodstream and where they disperse. So the hormone-sensitive lipoprotein thus effectively facilitate burning of fat and therefore weight loss. So these two act in, they are antagonistic. This one does this, it stores fat. This one breaks down triglycerides and makes you lose weight. So insulin, however, it blocks, when there's insulin in the blood, it blocks the hormone-sensitive lipase so that glucose combustion has the top priority and activates the metabolism of glucose into fat. So the presence of insulin blocks the hormone-sensitive lipase. Anywho, adipocytes absorb glucose and end up and use up glycerol, a carbohydrate that combines with fatty acids to form triglycerides. Finally, insulin has the ability to activate the creation of new adipose cells and further increase fat storage ability. So when insulin is there, it causes sugars in a way to be stored into fat because it blocks the work or what the hormone sensitive lipase does. Anyhow, insulin thus facilitates the storage of fat in a number of ways. That means it has an effect of causing weight gain. Indeed, that's not a surprise. We have been aware of the relationship between insulin and weight gain since the 60s. The science can get complicated, but there is a simple way to frame this or all this. In the words of a Harvard professor called George Cahill, carbohydrate is driving insulin, is driving fat. That's just that. If you consume a carbohydrate, you activate insulin, and insulin activates storage of fat in the adipose tissue. And since insulin production is triggered by carbohydrate consumption, carbohydrates are simply to blame for weight gain. It's that simple. Since insulin production is triggered by carbohydrate consumption, carbohydrates are primarily to blame for weight gain. This is shown by the direct chronological correlation between the obesity, which is where you have diabetes and obesity crisis, and the massive spread of processed food rich in invasive carbohydrates in today's diet. The biggest factor in the secretion of insulin is the kind of carbohydrate ingested. The type of carbohydrate determines how upset the pancreas will become and how much insulin it will secrete as a result. More specifically, a carbohydrate's power to cause weight gain is determined by the ease in which it is digested and absorbed. So before we looked at the example of dealing with a biscuit is easily absorbed. But when you consume something like an arrowroot or sweet potato or cassava, that one takes a little bit longer to be digested and glucose absorbed in the blood. So there are several factors there that directly correlate to weight gain or not. One is the type of carbohydrate or the kind that is ingested, because that is what will determine how much insulin will be released and how much glucose or glycogen will be stored into the fat tissues, okay, or the fatty tissues. Okay, never before in human history has our species had so much access to carbohydrate-laden foods that are artificial and reconstituted like never before, as it has during the last 2 generations of our lifetime. That's why this book is telling you the last 2 generations have been born with an already a problem in their pancreas, because the pancreas itself is already stimulated or is already conscious of foods that are just high in carbohydrates. Okay. Just a few more minutes, then I finish. I have just one or two sections. So when looking at the development of the 3 types of nutrients, proteins and carbohydrates, over the last 50 years, what becomes clear For protein-heavy foods such as meat, fish, poultry, seafood, and eggs, little has changed in matters of nutritional value. A steak, an egg, or a piece of salmon wouldn't look very different today as it did in the 70s. The same goes for fats. Olive oil and butter aren't much different today to how they were generations ago. But it's a very different story when it comes to carbohydrates. Their production started to soar about 50 years ago. Walking through any supermarket today, you will see a selection of these enticing foods is endlessly growing. What's more, their consumption has heightened sugar content. Um, their consumption and heightened sugar content make them truly addictive, like truly, truly addictive. That's why we always advocate for this simple thing. Please, 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 if you are able, do not give children under 1 year sugary treats. And if you are able, please, please, please do not consume sugary treats. When you are pregnant, you're already exposing your fetus to foods that it will not be able to consume at a later date. Got it? Tunaelewana? I hope you're together. If it is possible, do not consume foods that are high in sugar because they expose you and your fetus to insulin resistance problems down the line. Okay? So sugar, insulin, and long-term effects. What will happen if the dynamic between sugar, insulin, and weight gain continues to progress the way it has been going since 1965 to 1970, with fats being demonized and sugars taking their place in the diet? I told you, there's been a campaign to demonize fats, which is diverting our attention to the wrong thing. It's not the fats, it's the sugars. It's the sugars. But if we continue allowing our attention to be diverted such that we are looking at fats, we are missing the point. So only 20 years ago, when all-out war was waged in the United States against cholesterol and fat, a war that history will show was ill-advised, here's what the American Heart Association has to say. In order to control the amount and the type of saturated fatty acids and cholesterol you consume, choose snacks from other food groups, such as lighter crackers, salt-free pretzels, sweets, sugar, syrup, honey, or jam. Have you heard those things? Light crackers, how are crackers made? Salt-free pretzels, and this is the American Heart Association. So if you eat food that is salt-free, but it is high in sugar, what is happening really? You're really destroying your heart muscle because your heart it has sodium for the sodium potassium channel that lets in molecules into the heart or out. So anyhow, above these food items, listen to them again. Lighter crackers, salt-free pretzels, sweets, sugar, syrup, honey, and jam. This was just a gimmick to divert our attention from fats to look more at sugar. To divert our attention from sugar to look more at fats, whereas that's not the case. We should be looking at sugar more keenly. Above all, we looked at one-off effects of a single packet of biscuits on an adult pancreas, but we know what happens if this consumption of evasive carbohydrates happens on a daily basis. What it leads to is equally regular secretion of insulin and therefore to increasing weight gain. Even if you just imagine this, from the moment you think, oh, I'm going to have chocolate or I'm going to have a packet of biscuit, your brain already sends the signal to the pancreas to produce insulin. So if the food comes, whatever the form, like if you eat a chocolate and then you eat a plate of rice and beans, already the body is prepared to store as much of that sugar as possible into the fatty tissues. So the problem is we don't only eat one packet of biscuits. We eat that packet of biscuits and between 30 and 40 minutes, the energy has been used. So you will eat something else in the same hour. Or even when you're buying that packet of biscuits, you've not only bought biscuits, you've bought biscuits, cupcakes, and chocolate, and you will eat them probably before you get home. Taking, for example, if you bought those snacks right after work, before you get home, there will be very little left in those packets. Anywho, I think this is why you are being discouraged from eating on the road. Like it just makes you eat a lot more. And we are not even conscious of how many what you are eating. You're just feeling hungry and you continue eating, whether it's because you are in a shoddy mood or you had a bad work day, just continue eating. Yeah, so let me continue reading. So what it leads to is an equally irregular secretion of insulin and therefore to increasing weight gain. And this is the situation for the great majority of people who are overweight or obese or have diabetes. Imagine the case of an overweight person who, instead of eating meat, fish, and green vegetables, regularly consumes white bread, potatoes, fruit juice, white rice from Chinese or Japanese restaurant, biscuits in the afternoon, doesn't shy away from beer, and adds 2 tablespoons of sugar to their coffee. Then there's the next level up, those who drink sugary fizzy drinks and eat dips. And I told you about dips, crisps, and sweets. I think that many people, especially those who are experiencing weight problems, would think that this is a pretty normal diet and would admit that it is quite similar to their own. We have considered what happens when insulin to safeguard against levels of glucose in the blood activates fat production and causes excessive weight. But what happens if if a diet too high in sugars persists and become a daily occurrence? After some time, varying from person to person and according to the amount of sugars being consumed, a phenomenon arises that is truly disastrous for the organism: insulin resistance. This means it doesn't matter how much insulin is released, it is still not able to pack the sugar into the fatty tissues. That becomes the problem. So this term, you should remember it because it will become crucial term glycemic index. This is an interesting read. I think the more I read the books, the more I see the problem and the more I feel my spirit being downcast somehow. Because I think of the available foods and the convenience of these foods. Like how easy is it to go to a shop and buy a packet of biscuits or buy a piece of chapati from a roadside side seller or buy something else that really spikes your sugars within a very small period, and that consistent habit that today you bought biscuits, tomorrow you'll feel the urge to buy another packet of biscuits, and so on and so forth, to a point that the body now becomes resistant to the production of insulin. My advice based on these books and many others that I have read is, if you are in a position to avoid sugary treats, and it is hard to begin with, but it is the small gestures that you continue doing day in, day out. This year I'm holding is a packet of peanuts. I am very conscious nowadays the type of carbohydrates that I eat. And so when I went to the supermarket recently, I was doing shopping, but I was quite hungry. I opted to buy these roasted peanuts. This is 100 grams. 100 grams. It was 65 shillings. But if you compare 100 grams of biscuits, one, their cost will be up high, and then the nutrient content will be very different. Very, very different. These are just roasted peanuts with salt. Very good for you because they have healthy fats and they still have salt that is good. If you've not eaten anything else in that day, this is a good snack. It gives you fiber because the peanut is not shelled, it's not shelled. You've not removed the skin, so that gives you fiber. That's why it's brown. The nuts are brown because they haven't removed the skin. That gives you fiber. Then it gives you fat, the healthy kinds, and it also doesn't spike your blood sugar levels or the insulin levels in your body. Anyway, this was a good reading session. It has given me a lot to think about, and I hope it has given you too something to think about. I will continue reading the book, maybe on camera, off camera, I'm not sure, but I will take you along as much as I can. There's so many books. Honestly, I think probably by this point, I have 20 books that are on nutrition and talking, most of them narrowed down to the same thing about sugar. So see you on my next read. If you have not watched a video, there's a video I did about sugar being the main culprit. Kindly check it out, and I'll be uploading another video today or tomorrow about what we need to do if we want to lose weight and keep it off. Okay. So see you, and thank you so much for being here. Bye. Bye.